Hey there, it's Karl Isenburg, and we're continuing our series on the Arizona purchase contract, and congratulations. If you're listening to this video, then you probably just went under contract as a seller or just went under contract as a buyer, and for every one of you, Section 6 is critically important because it is the due diligence period. That's a due diligence time frame is when the buyer has the right to investigate anything that may be material to them, okay, to discover whatever they need to discover, because our Arizona contract is an as-is contract, okay? So as you see below, we're going to scroll through. We also have a link to the contract below, but Section 6 begins on line 213 of the contract, and it talks about when your inspection period is. You have a right to extend it or not extend it, but if everyone signed it, whatever stated there is the time period with which it's done. And it's very clear about all the things that you're able to disapprove of, right? You can't, you could disapprove of the neighbor doesn't, you don't like the way the neighbor's dog barks, or you don't like the way the sun sets behind the tree in the backyard. If those things are material to you, you have a right to disapprove of them. You also have a right as a buyer to cancel them. The seller does have rights in terms of the response, but the seller has an obligation to make that home available to the buyer for their inspections and due diligence. We've had multiple situations where we went a little further than normal, okay? And if it's an older home, let's scope the sewer, all right? If the roof has some questions, let's get our roofer out there. If there's an air conditioning issue, let's get a licensed air conditioning person out there. We always start with a generalist. We start with the home inspector. Okay, and the seller, sometimes you don't feel great having people coming into your house, but it is the buyer's right to do that. We will coordinate that and minimize the intrusion for you, but we want to make sure the buyer does what they're supposed to do. And when you look at the contract here, it's very specific. Section 6A, it defines what the due diligence period is. Section 6B, it says, hey, if square footage is important, you better check it out. You go, yeah, whatever. It's in the tax records. I had a situation this week where the tax records were wrong. I had a situation 3 months ago where the plat had been flipped and it was like 300 square feet different. The wrong property had been sold. Tax records are not always right. So we always want to make sure that we don't take anything for granted. Termites, we always encourage our buyers to do termites. If I'm either a seller or a buyer, termites are not horrible. You have them or you don't. And if you do, we get them treated with a warranty. It's all not a big deal. Flood hazard. You say, well, it's not a flood hazard. Well, you don't know. That's why you always want to make certain you get a hold of your insurance agent, and you want to make sure you check out your homeowner's insurance. Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, if you know that that you're in a floodplain, you need to disclose that if you know it, okay? And the same thing with the sewer. You go, well, of course it's not a sewer. I pay my bill to the city. We've had situations where they've paid their bill to the city for 30 years. It was never on a sewer. It was still on the septic. They'd never reconnected it. That's why it's always material to ask those questions and make sure you understand that. There's always these things in here about swimming pool barrier laws. Very important. I'm a passionate water dude. I swim every day, okay? And I was a swim teacher when I was a kid. So I get it, all right? Pool barrier laws, you say, why do I have to sign this when it's a condo and I don't even have it? And why do I have to sign it when there's no pool in the house? Well, it's just a disclosure that everyone knows that every municipality, every city has their own laws about pool barrier laws. And any children under the age of 6, you got to have them. Okay? Or do they enforce them? No, not really. But if something were to happen, boy, the liability would be huge if you didn't follow the law. So it's really important. Okay? And then we talk about the fact that your realtor, guess what, is not a contractor or a surveyor or qualified. And we'll always tell you where to get the answer. We've got experience and give you input into that, but we're not actually qualified to say, oh yeah, this is exactly what it's going to cost to fix this roof, unless we're licensed contractors, and I'm not. Moving on to Section 6I, the inspection period notice, and Section 6J. Okay, it talks about the fact that before the end of the home inspection, you have to come up and the buyer has to raise their hand. You get one bite of the apple, and the buyer says, this is what I disapprove of. Some buyers say, everything on the laundry list that's in the home inspection report. Okay. Other buyers say, which I agree with this strategy, by the way, these items are very, very important to me, and I disapprove of them because they're material. And Maybe I won't buy the house if that doesn't get dealt with. So two different ways to handle that, but it's important. And you write down on this buyer's inspection notice what your things that you're disapproving, and you submit them to the seller. And once you've done that, you can't go back and say, oh wait, I forgot about this, or oh wait, what about that? So these things, whatever those things are, we will help you craft that. If we're the listing agent and we get it from the other side, we'll help you understand what that means. And when they go through that, once it's received to the seller has 5 days to respond. Because sometimes if we're listed, if it's like we're selling it, wait a minute, well, they're crazy. We're going to get my guy out there to check it out. Or they want to look at their own bids, okay? And then, and so the seller will respond. And the seller can do one of three things. They can tell you to pound sand, I'm not going to do a thing. They can say, this is a fantastic, reasonable request, we're going to do everything. Or they can say, you know what, you asked for these 12 things, but we're only going to do these 5 things. And once the seller sends that back to the buyer then has 5 days within which to cancel the contract. That's a time frame where there's final negotiations, where the buyer's agent says to the listener, look, if you don't fix this, we're walking. We're going to cancel the contract and get all of our earnest money back. And it's been 2 weeks of pain and trouble. Is that what you want? And sometimes the seller says, yeah, I'm going to do this. You get down to brass tacks and you finalize it. And at that point in time, the seller, you can do an addendum to change it, you can fix it, but the bottom line is the seller gives a response and the buyer has to either accept it or cancel it. Oftentimes they're saying, well, hey, reduce the price, or what about that? So other contractual issues come up, but the buyer's inspection notice is a separate document. It's really not a part of the contract. So if we do something like that, we have to create an addendum. Hopefully your eyes aren't glossing over at this point. I'm really excited about Section 6J, but it's really, critically important. And that's what happens. Also, just so you know, we also put in Section 6 the home warranty. The buyer can ask for it, the buyer can pay for it, the seller can pay for it. It's not a bad thing to do. And Section 6I gives us a right for a walkthrough. Well, let's say the seller agreed to do 4 items. Buyer is going to come in and inspect, walk through the home, and figure out, is the home in materially the same shape as we went under contract? And did everything that the seller said they were going to do, did they do it? Did they make all those repairs? Now, the seller, even if we represent the seller or represent the buyer, it is the seller's responsibility to allow those walkthroughs to happen. You can't say, nope, not going to let you walk through the home. Just close escrow. It doesn't work that way. And also, you have to allow the inspections. You got to keep the utilities on. And just so you know, the IRS has always reported the Foreign Investment Real Property Tax Act. If you're from another state, that it is reported, which is an interesting thing in Section 6. So thanks for hanging in this long video. I wonder of who actually started the video is still with me at the end of the video. But this is a really important part of our contract. Thanks for taking the time to listen. Have a great day.